Rate of return is a component of a plan, is not the plan. As soon as you enter distribution, sequencing matters. The highest magnitude of things that matter for whether or not you're going to be able to sustain the income you want from the assets you've built.
Jason Sanger is a RICP and president of Wealth Building Cornerstones. He built a system that answers one question.
Will your retirement income last?
Today, he runs the math live.
With 26 years of real market data on screen to prove it.
So we're going to take the S&P 500 returns from 1999 through 2024. The annual yields that the S&P 500 received each year. You add all those up and divide by 26, and you get a 9.8% average. We end up with 7.7 million.
Not a bad day.
I pull out my 98 grand every year, which is the average return. I actually run out of money in year 11.
Oh my goodness. It's pretty far from 7 million.
You're not retired unless you create a paycheck that'll last the rest of your life.
Jason.
How's it going?
Welcome back. This has been 5 years in the making. You came on my show when I first got started. You shared about the 2 economic powers, wealth building cornerstones, and I'm really grateful that we're sitting down because I want to not just hear the whole philosophy, because you're the creator and the founder of Wealth Building Cornerstones, but we're actually going to see some of what you've built, and I think our audience is really going to eat it up about the 2 economic powers. There's a lot of people that I have on the show that talk theory. But what I love about what you've built is you can actually show people kind of what's going on. And so let's jump into this presentation, and you really start many of your conversations with 2 questions. And so with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, everybody's got these questions. As a pre-retiree, everybody wants the ability to stop working in the future. So you have to measure the actual retirement income plan you're building to answer these 2 questions. How much to save, where to put it?
Yep.
Well, the first one's a volume question. But you can't begin to measure volume until you know how efficient your retirement income plan is. That should be obvious to everybody, but it's really not in our industry. So you have to start with where to put it. What is the plan you want to build?
Yes.
And in the hierarchy of different plans you could save into, for efficiency purposes, which one do you want to actually pick and do? So we liken it to climbing a mountain. Like a lot of the industry builds just investments with people and just talks about accumulation. But if your objective is retirement income, because that's what you're trying to have the ability to do, is stop working and turn the money you've saved into a paycheck that will replace you as a working person, you have to measure both elements of a retirement income plan, the accumulation and distribution elements at the same time, to create the objective of annual income that you can get from the sums of savings you did that allows you to stop working. So you can't just do one side of the mountain.
Yeah.
But I would say that the vast majority of the industry only talks about that and measures that. There's no completion.
Most of YouTube, by the way, YouTube finances, it's like the FIRE movement, and it's all about low cost index funds, and it's all net worth and rate of return driven. Very few people are talking about distribution and retirement strategies. It's all like the rate of return. And that's an example of going up the mountain.
Well, the rate of return is a component of a plan,
right?
But it is not the plan. It actually is. I'm not saying it's not important, but at the same time, your focus has to be on what is the paycheck I'm going to get from the savings I did, because that is really what gives you the ability to stop working. There's a lot of indirect things you can measure, but until you start to measure the actual paycheck of your plan, you really don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
is really what it comes down to.
And is the mountain representing net worth, or is it representing income? What does the mountain represent in this example?
So getting up the mountain is your pre-retirement, where you're building your plan, and then coming back down is your distribution.
I see.
You could talk about like Mount Everest, like out of all the deaths that occur on Mount Everest, like 80% of them occur on the way down.
Yep.
Why? They didn't plan ahead. They didn't have their bag packed properly. They didn't have the right strategies to make it back down, or whatever it might be, because they didn't pack their bag properly in the beginning. So this is what I kind of said before, is as a pre-retiree, somebody who's retiring in 10 years, 20, 30, 40, to know how to really build your retirement income plan, you have to start at the top of the mountain, hypothetically here. Say, I'm going to transplant myself to the top of the mountain. I'm going to say, what happens here? If I got a lump sum of money, or how I built my savings, what mechanisms or strategies can I use to turn that into a paycheck now?
Yes.
And by understanding what's going to be available then, it can translate back into how you should position money at the age of 35, 45, 55 along the way.
Yep.
It's never too late at the same time. The sooner you start understanding this, the better.
Yep.
But
another way to say that, if you're 70 watching this, there's still strategies, but you have less options than if you're 35 or 40.
Potentially, just because of how things have lined up, but there's still options.
Yes.
And some of them will be more efficient than others.
So we go back to the 2 questions. How much money to save? It's always funny to me when someone's like, save 10% or 20%. It's like, okay, that sounds good, but like, did you just pull that out of your butt? Like, so it's like how much to save and then where to put it. And you're saying the ways to really answer that is to think with the end in mind, which looking at retirement income, the actual objective versus net worth. And most of the people are looking at, how do you feel about being a millionaire? It's like $1 million feels like a good number, but it actually is, in a lot of cases, may not be as much money as you think it is. And so we need to reverse engineer those two questions around income, not net worth.
Yes.
Okay.
You're measuring the paycheck that you're trying to create. And that's what makes it simple to understand. At the same time, it's simple and powerful. So it's extremely sophisticated. It actually, you mentioned before, like sometimes people will think, oh, it's too simple. No, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yes.
We've just mucked it all up for no reason.
Do you think it's just because we have ego in our space and we want people to think we're smarter than we are? Or like, why do you think people complicate this?
Well, I think it's just the nature of not seeing the objective first. Like, what is it? And keeping your eye on the ball kind of deal.
Yes.
Like, this is what I'm actually trying to accomplish. Stop measuring that.
Yes. If you're not clear on where you want to go, a lot of things can look attractive. On the slide, we have just building investments, accumulation only. That's where most people on YouTube and a lot of advisors are focused on. Also, ironically, there's an incentive in our space to just accumulate assets. And then what you're saying is building assets and distribution needs to be integrated together, but based on that distribution strategy should be really determining how much money we should save and where we should put it.
Yeah. So you got to be measuring both elements together here, and really start at the top of the mountain and then back yourself into being able to answer the two questions of how much to save and where to put it. So there's a default path for everybody for their retirement income plan these days. Like the default path as we start to move forward is really an investment only path. We call it the one economic power path. And the reason why that's that path for everybody, I'll get into in a little bit, but it has to do with trying to use investments for accumulation and investments for distribution. So as we look at this, the thing at the top of the mountain that many people don't necessarily understand is that how retirement assets react to fluctuating returns as you start to draw money out for income is completely different than it was during accumulation when you were putting money in. So you're changing the dynamics of your money 180 degrees now. So the day you enter retirement, literally, it's a one-day event. The dynamics of your money change to a different realm and different set of rules than that you haven't known before. You had a different set of rules for the first 40 years of retirement. Yep. Now, in one day, you have to know how the rules of distribution work because they're different. So what we'll talk about here real quick is an example of that, because many people maybe have heard of the 4% distribution rule for retirement from investment assets. A lot of people don't know where that comes from or why that's even being talked about. And today it's really been more of like a 3 to a 4% distribution rate rule. Well, what I run into is a lot of people think, well, that's just like a savings rate at a bank. Like if I can get 3 to 4% at the bank, that's why they say that I can spend it and then pass on the legacy dollars of the lump sum later on. That's not where it comes from at all. So what I want to do here is walk through this a little bit from an investment approach and why that 4% rule has kind of been out there, or 3 to 4% rule. And it has to do with a simple concept that order or sequence of returns during accumulation on a lump sum really doesn't matter. So during our accumulation years, that isn't something I pay attention to, is necessarily my sequence of returns. I'm looking for my real return over the course of time. But I'm not looking at the year by year sequencing so much.
Yes.
Then as soon as you enter distribution, sequencing matters. And it matters
a lot,
to the point where it's like the highest magnitude of things that matter for whether or not you're going to be able to sustain the income you want from the assets you've built.
Yes.
So I got an example here that we'll walk through, just a simple concept example that demonstrates this. So we're going to take the S&P 500 returns from 1999 through 2024. So it's a 26-year period. We see on the screen here the annual yields that the S&P 500 received each year. You add all those up and divide by 26, and you get a 9.8% average. So we're going to start this accumulation cycle with no withdrawals in it, just accumulating a lump sum of money at $1 million. Call it one unit. I don't care if it's 100 grand or 10 million. At the end of this 26-year period, we end up with 7.7 million.
Yeah,
so
not a bad day.
Yeah, everybody earmarked it in their brains a little bit for a second here. That's the accumulation of 26 years in the S&P, straight up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the same set of returns for accumulation, no withdrawals, but we're going to reverse the returns of this time frame. So 2024 in the front, 1999 in the back. It's the exact same returns, just different order. And now, so the average is the same, 9.8. The question I have for everybody is, what is the ending value in 26 years of this account? And sometimes people are puzzled by this at first, but the answer is it's identical. It's always the same, 7.7 million in accumulation. Why? Because on a lump sum during accumulation, the order of returns that you receive is inconsequential to the end result. I could literally jumble up all 26 years of these returns, put them in any order I want, and it always gets 7.7 million.
Yes.
So now I'm going to flip to the different, like a retirement scenario here. Well, a lot of people think that if I'm going to average a return of 9.8% on a period of time into the future, I should be able to pull that as a withdrawal rate from the starting lump sum. So 9.8% of my lump sum. So that's what we're going to go to next is now we're going to take the same period doing the normal order from 1999 on of this time frame.
And logic would say, I mean, I've heard people on the radio talk about, hey, it could be conservative taking 8% because if you're averaging 12, you take 8%, you'll still be ahead. So this is logical. If you're averaging almost 10% to be able to take just the interest, you should have all your principal.
Yes. And that's still what a lot of people think out there. And so as we look at this, though, we're going to see that as time goes on, drawing this $98,000 a year, the question is what happens to my asset value as I earn these returns? And the answer in this sequencing, as I pull out my 98 grand every year, which is the average return, so average rate of income coming out, I actually run out of money in year 11 due to this sequencing. So it's a pretty quick, hey, I got a problem here scenario.
So it's pretty far from 7 million.
Yes.
7 million number. Yeah.
And because of that sequencing, I actually run out of money. So now, and then again, the average is nice. So now what we're going to do is we're going to reverse the returns. Same set again, but we're going to put 2024 in the front.
Yes.
But now because of the sequencing and the different order of positive and negative returns I received during distribution, I never run out of money for this 26-year period. I get my $98,000 a year of income for all 26 years, and my initial value actually grows from $1 million to $1.4 million. So this the problem here should be obvious to everybody. If I'm going to use an investment-based approach to create retirement income, but I don't know the sequence of return I'm going to get into the future, how do I establish what my safe withdrawal rate is today? Because I got to start pulling today before I know my 26-year sequence or 30-year sequence.
If you don't know, your money's almost held hostage and you have to almost assume for the worst.
Yes, because you got to be very conservative. So that's what the industry has done here with people call them withdrawal rate simulations, Monte Carlo simulations, the 4% rule, whatever it might be. But generally speaking, you're looking at a 3 to a 4% withdrawal rate with maybe 5 to 25% chances of failure over 30, 35 years, depending on how you measure it exactly. But that's where that rule comes from. It's not from like, hey, I can earn 2 or 3% in my bank account. It's because of the fluctuations that are going to happen into the future that are unknown. You have to make sure that you're not running out of money. I don't know anybody who wants to run out of money and income at the age of 85 or 90, for example. So that's really where it comes from. And this is kind of everybody's default path when it comes to planning their retirement income. If they don't consciously understand the different options that are going to be available down the road, then this is the plan you end up with, is kind of that 4% rule type area, 3 to 4%. Right.
Makes sense.
So what we're doing here now is the industry has different things though that you can use. So when you start talking about these retirement income plans, what most people miss is that there's two powers of the financial industry. One power is the accumulation power of investments. This is your rate of return power.
Yes.
It's pretty good at accumulating, generally speaking. On a year-by-year basis, could you lose some money at times? Yeah, but obviously the history of the market shows it grows. We just saw that it struggles in distribution by itself due to the unpredictable nature of the return sequences you might get. Well, that's where the distribution power comes in. The other side of the industry is the law of large numbers, actuarial science, the power of pooling that is done by insurance companies in the industry and the products they make. Well, through the power of pooling, at retirement age, you can get maybe 6 to 10% guaranteed income rates for life from the lump sums you have versus 3 to 4% non-guaranteed.
Interesting.
So the power...
That's big, by the way. That's if you can keep the same level of risk and increase it by that can be life-changing for somebody.
Absolutely. And the power of pooling, the way it does it is very simple. The pooling gives certainty to things that individuals on their own can't give certainty to. that law of large numbers creates certainty.
Yes.
And that's, I could go into depth on that, but we don't need to do that today as to why. But here's the kind of historical lesson on this is everybody used to get these, many people that got both these powers incorporated into their retirement income plan for efficiency by default through pension plans.
Yes.
Prior to the 1980s, people generally had a salary plus a guaranteed retirement income plan through their employer called a pension plan. So they didn't even have to think about it. They didn't contribute to it. They just worked and they retired and they got X amount of income for life guaranteed as part of a pension. Pension plans incorporate both of these powers automatically into their calculations to create that guarantee of that benefit. What happened in our society is around the 1980s, defined contribution plans really became popular and came out of the marketplace. So you have 401ks, 403bs and stuff really taking the place now of pension plans in that nature over the last 35 years or so, or longer.
And for companies, that's an advantage because then they're not on the hook for, so you can see where they were like, oh, I would love to do a 401k versus a pension. And with the match and all, it can sound attractive, but really walking away from pensions is a big hit to someone's future income.
Right. They're transferring the risk from the employer to the employees for the retirement income planning.
Yes.
And there was no explanation to any employee when this happened. Like there wasn't like, hey, we got to sit down. You guys have to understand now you don't have a guaranteed income plan anymore. You have to create that on your own. So what we have are these investment plans now, which are fine. Like nothing against a 401k plan, 403b plan. You're getting matches and stuff like that. Great. Profit sharing. But the fact of the matter is those are not retirement income plans.
Yep.
They are investment plans. You have to create your own retirement income plan now. You have to measure it. You have to make sure you're saving enough into it. And if you want the efficiencies that the two economic powers used to bring automatically into the picture for people, you have to now seek out creating that efficiency and getting that distribution power built back in to your plan in balance with the investment area, because nobody's going to do it for you. Like nobody's out there doing this. And that's what us advisors are for, is to help people understand how this relationship happens. So it's not an either or between these two powers. The insurance industry isn't trying to fight against the investment industry and vice versa for these efficiencies. One power is not good at doing the other power's job.
And didn't Ernst & Young do 2 studies that almost independently proved that investments and insurance products create better outcomes than one or the other?
Yeah, Ernst & Young, Dr. Wade Pfau. This has been proven from a scientific perspective, academic perspective over and over again. It's not a... So by doing that, you can take the simulations that have already been done on these strategies and things that are available out there. And now the trick is, how do I apply that to my own life?
Yes.
How do I actually implement it in a way where I can personalize those calculations to myself?
Yes.
And that's really what our system does, is help people see that and bring that to life, how to match up these two powers the way they want to. I mean, somebody could choose and say, I don't want the accumulation power or distribution power, either one at all, or I want them in a 75-25 balance versus a 50-50. Once it's explained and they understand how it works, then it's easy implementation because everybody's got a conscious understanding of what they're implementing.
Yes.
Right now, I'd say the vast majority of people are unconsciously planning to the default path of a one economic power approach.
Yeah.
And they don't know how this all works. And in the industry, a lot of times back in the 90s and 80s, when the pension plans kind of split open, all of a sudden you had the investment and insurance companies kind of fighting each other for the business.
Yes.
And they kept trying to say, hey, we can do everything. Each one did, right? So that's how you got this like back and forth where an insurance-only advisor might be bashing investments to try to sell all their products, and then the vice versa. Investment-only person's trying to bash the insurance person and all the products they have, right?
Before the 1990s, was that not the case? Because when I first got into the space, I learned from a lot of insurance people, and they very much had a bias against investments. They would almost pitch, and a lot of IUL does this more than whole life, but both can do this, but they almost make it sound like this is a better investment. And I'm like, okay, it's not even an investment, period. You can't call insurance an investment. But then on the investment side, there's such a hatred and disgust for annuities and life insurance. I'm just wondering, like, when do you think that happened? Was there a time in history that's like this is, or has that always been the case?
I think it really started happening in the 80s, 90s when the split opened, because prior to that, people generally had Social Security, they had their pensions and stuff like that. They were kind of the retirement income plan. All of a sudden, when all these dollars came outside of these pension plans and stuff, and we're in the stuff that everybody's now trying to basically in a capitalistic market make money on, then all of a sudden you had these two camps that used to work together automatically, now fighting each other for those dollars. And so I think it just has to do with a lack of understanding here of what's going on, because they don't fight each other. It's not this against that. It's
an and.
It's an and. It's a balanced approach, and and measure it out.
So really, we talk about how much money you should save, where should you put it, think with the end in mind, looking at distribution. If you just focus on distribution power, you could be missing out, because distribution power is not helping you build the nest egg. But if you just look at the building the nest egg, it's not going to be very efficient. An example is, how much do you care about how many cows you have or how much milk it produces? And so there's that aspect, but the person that's understanding both, in your opinion, is going to be way more efficient. And the earlier you understand these, the more options you have for how to answer those two questions. How much should I save and where should I put them?
Yeah, they'll generally be way more efficient, and they'll have more options available instead of being pigeonholed into the one that at large can be relatively inefficient.
Cool. All right. So big picture, on the same page. Now let's talk about the actual details of how you actually scientifically show people the best, most efficient way to get into this.
Yeah. So the key is really to just start measuring this for yourself. Like whatever age you are, how much ever savings you've got built, you got to start actually calculating forward what's going to happen down the road. So begin with that purpose in mind, and really understand how these strategies work and what happens at the end result at the top of the mountain. Here's the other thing. Keep an agnostic, open mind.
Yes.
What I mean by that is, don't shut out half of the industry.
That's right.
Because of some perceived bias of somebody else, or don't go on the internet and just Google this stuff. You can find good and bad stuff about literally everything out there.
Yes.
Whatever you're looking for will pop up as your train of thought continues. They will feed you whatever it is they think they want you to hear.
Yes.
You need to stay agnostic and realize that it's kind of like building a house. Every tool has its purpose. Mm-hmm. Same in the industry here. Every product has its purpose, whether it's investment-based or insurance-based. But I don't want to use a hammer to do a saw's job.
Yes.
I could probably get the job done, but it's going to not look very good, and it's not going to be very efficient.
Yes.
Right. So you can do that. Like you can say everything can do something, but if it's not very good at it, why would I do that?
Right.
Why wouldn't I just use the right product for the right space?
Yes.
So as we kind of look at this too, and fast forward to retirement here, if you're in or close to retirement these days, we talk about the idea that there's three functions of money in retirement. This is a very critical thing here, again, from an engineering perspective. Define the functions of money that your assets have to perform in retirement. So it's income, and then liquidity, and then legacy. By
income, okay. Income, liquidity, legacy.
Yeah. It's a paycheck that you got to create first. So any available resources you have in retirement, at retirement time, whether it be pension plans that you have or Social Security, your 401ks, IRAs, you first have to look at that and say, how am I going to create my paycheck that allows me to stop working? Mm-hmm. What am I going to move those things into now during the distribution phase to create that ability? Once we know how much money needs to be allocated into that income dedicated area to create the paycheck, whatever we didn't use for that waterfalls into our liquidity legacy growth portfolio, which is also our long-term care extra portfolio, if we want to incorporate that on top of there. So that waterfall effect and understanding that is a big key later on. And you want to be able to measure that as well, because there's different ways, even if you didn't do any planning for this until retirement, there's different ways that you can put the different strategies you can put your money into to create your income. Well, one of those strategies might be a 3.5% distribution rate income from the lump sum you put in. So per million, 35 grand a year. Another strategy that might be available to you though is being able to get 7% income.
Yeah.
From the vehicle you put it in. And maybe that's even something that might be guaranteed for life potentially. Well, think about that. If you get double the income rate, you'd only have to put 500,000 of your million in to get the same income you are after. That leaves the other 500,000 free and clear of any income obligation for you, paycheck wise. And that's now pure liquid money that you can use for anything you want in retirement.
Yes.
So this understanding now that the rules are different in retirement than they are in pre-retirement, it's a big deal. Most people just keep extending the same stuff they thought they knew.
Yes.
into retirement, but it's a different
I'm
set.
going to oversimplify it, but if you can create the same income with $1 million versus $2 million, you now free up $1 million for you to create more legacy or options versus most people aren't able to have that flexibility because they're tying up all their money to do, the accumulation job, but then also the distribution job in one power.
But you just brought up a great point there to just hone in on. Money that's dedicated to create your paycheck for the next 35 years so you can stay retired is by definition not truly liquid.
You're right.
Right? You got to take it out monthly. So if you take an excess of the annual income you're going to pull, you just put in jeopardy the ability to have the income on a long-term basis. I mean, you could now run out of money because you grab more. So everybody's going to have to dedicate a certain amount of lump sum of money when they stop working to create their paycheck.
Yes.
And once it's dedicated to income now, while it might be technically grabbable, it is now really not truly grabbable. Or like in practice, you shouldn't be practically thinking I can grab that. Because you can get in trouble that way.
If you're a high-earning professional, entrepreneur, or someone who wants more control of your money, we offer something called a Clarity Call. It's a one-on-one conversation where we learn more about your situation and walk you through how integrating whole life insurance could help better your financial situation. It's no pressure or fluff, just real clarity on whether this strategy is right for you. Click the link in the description or tag comment below, and we'll walk you through exactly how we can help you.
If you're at retirement or even are getting close, like 5 to 10 years out, what you really have to start doing is identifying the functions of money that have to be performed to you by your assets in retirement. So you're going to think about it like a waterfall effect for efficiency. You've got the resources you've created for retirement, whether it be your IRAs, 401ks, things of that nature, investment accounts, real estate, whatever it is, businesses, the stuff that you're going to have available to use as resources in retirement, plus Social Security, pension plans, things of that nature. You got to take those resources and first create your paycheck with it. So we're first going to have to choose a product, a method, a strategy that we're going to use to put our assets into to create the paycheck that will allow you to stop working into. Like we got to actually know what that is. From there, anything we didn't use as income dedicated money waterfalls through to liquidity legacy growth portfolio. And also additional long-term care insurance areas fit into this liquidity legacy area. But by understanding the functions first, it's going to bring a lot of clarity to your retirement because retirement is very murky to a lot of people. Like it's confusing. They don't understand it because they haven't never done it before. They've spent 40 years just accumulating. Right?
So just to simplify this, because when I first heard this, I was confused by the waterfall, but now it's like so abundantly clear to me. You optimize for income first because we can talk about legacy, you can talk about liquidity, but some people will not have the luxury of having legacy and liquidity based on their inputs. So if you need hypothetical $100,000 of income, we figure out that first. And then if there's additional dollars, that then you can decide liquidity and legacy. The reason why liquidity and legacy doesn't necessarily come first is if you need X, like we need to solve that first. Is that correct?
You're not retired unless you create a paycheck that'll last the rest of your life.
Okay.
Right. So you got to do that first. And what you're really starting to describe is that the more efficient you are at creating your income stream from the money you have to dedicate to it, the more money is left over for liquidity legacy growth.
Yes.
So the less money I have to dedicate to my income function, the more money I could have for liquidity legacy. Now, that might not be your preference. You might say, I don't care about liquidity or legacy in retirement. I want everything for income for me. That's okay too. Then it's about getting the highest income from the assets you have.
Right.
So you'll be able to we'll show this in a couple of slides, or you'll be able to decide what you want to emphasize.
I see.
In these things too.
Cool. Okay. Makes sense. Waterfall makes sense.
So as you look at then retirement here, like we have tons of products available in our industry. Like we have investment products, we have insurance products, life insurance, annuities, all these different things, bank accounts. They're all good at their own thing. Like not one of these things does everything super efficiently.
Yes.
So the key to retirement is really identifying which products kind of to use where as a preference based on how good they are at performing that job.
Yep.
And when you do that, that's the definition of efficiency. So as we look at this, then retirement is about using different products and methods together to optimize the efficiency of your overall plan. And these functions, by doing the definitions of those functions I just talked about, it really helps you identify which products and methods might be better in certain spots.
Yes.
Because what you're trying to do is take your package option of income, liquidity, legacies. You've got these resources going into that to create your package of income, liquidity, legacy. Well, by using the right, or I should say, I don't say the right, but the more efficient strategies or products in the different spots, you create a bigger package option, more wealth potential, because you've used the right tools in the right spots effectively.
So an example, and again, this is not investment advice. I just want to give a clear disclaimer. You could have like a basic mutual fund, maybe with high fees. You could have maybe a inefficient money market account, and you could have maybe like something for legacy. And you could look at that and say, all those tools check the boxes, but it's an example of a smaller package versus if you get the maybe better investments, maybe a better legacy play, and maybe a better fixed income, it allows you to create more. Is that what you're saying? Like, there's a lot of things that could work, but a good strategy takes a look at what are the best things integrated together that gives me a greater outcome.
Right. There's lots of tools out there you can use for jobs that they aren't good at.
You're right.
They might still get the job done, but it might take you 10 times longer or give you 10% of the result.
A checking account could be a volatility buffer, but the opportunity cost 40 years of having a checking account maybe versus a life insurance policy or a high yield savings account would be hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars of difference when you factor in legacy, liquidity, and income.
Right. So going back to this slide here, we really have to mentally be agnostic to the different tools and methods and products in the industry when it comes to we're now creating an efficient retirement plan overall, like an efficient package for us for income, liquidity, legacy, because something that's good at income generation might not be great at legacy,
right?
And vice versa. So come into this world with an agnostic mind. Don't let the biases of the internet or other people around you sway you too much.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't receive some information, but at the end of the day, a certain method or product or strategy does something and it's geared towards doing that specific thing generally pretty well. If you try to use it for something else, it's probably not that great.
I understand.
So as we look at this, the first step here is to identify what's good at different functions. If you start to use the different tools in the different spots that are good at it, you now create a bigger package option, bigger wealth potential. The next step of this, though, is really now to decide how you want to emphasize it. Like, for example, we have some people that come into our office that say things like, that have a preference for a legacy, for example. So they want a bigger legacy instead of their income. I mean, and so we emphasize that we make sure they get the paycheck they want, but they really want to emphasize growing something for their kids or for a charity or something like that. Then on the flip side, we've got people more like the middle one you see here, where they want to really drive a bunch of income to themselves and they don't have as big of a concern for legacy.
Yeah.
That's a personal preference. That's not for us to say you have to have this amount or whatever. But understanding like just the package planning and how these things are connected and getting the right, more efficient products in different spots and things is the big key. So now in the calculations we're going to do with somebody, you're actually going to measure different income, liquidity, legacy packages side by side.
Yeah.
What makes the difference between the different packages you could deploy and utilize are the products or methods that are being used to create the different areas of functions. So I could use a certain income method in this package option.
I see.
A different one in this one. Well, that impacts how much assets I have to dedicate to that function as those income rates change. And that changes the waterfall effect then inside of those package options. So being able to see that for yourself and your own personalized numbers, it's imperative. Like it's crazy how clear retirement becomes when you start to see these things side by side.
I see. I love it. And I know that we can't necessarily share this today, but the other thing that I really like about your simplicity is no matter if you're 25, 35, 45, 55, maybe even if you're in your 60s, you don't necessarily need to commit to a strategy today. You just need to get both economic powers in motion, and then you give yourself a future option, which I love because some strategies almost make you feel like, man, like I'm giving up a lot of my freedom at 40 or 50, whereas like, no, it's like, let's just understand the rules of the game. And 15 years from now, 20 years from now, we have no idea what's going to happen, but you're going to have more tools available to make decisions that's best fits for you versus only having your hands tied.
Yes, absolutely. The sooner you get these understandings and things in play, the more options you're going to create.
Can you talk to the 1-to-1 ratio? Are you able to talk on or not?
Yeah. So like in pre-retirement, for example, where somebody might be 20, 30, 40 years out, if you start planning and understanding some of these concepts ahead of time, you'll have the opportunity to build some additional strategies that maybe somebody who just shows up at retirement without thinking about this doesn't have.
Right.
So it's not that they're not options, many options, I guess, to measure for somebody who didn't prepare ahead of time. But this one-to-one concept is that there's two powers of the financial industry. You've got the investment power, which is the rate of return power for growth. And in some other discussions we've had, we've talked about then what happens at retirement using just that power for distribution of income. And the challenge there is the sequence of return problem that pops up at retirement. So that default path there is a one economic power approach to accumulation and distribution. The two economic power approach starts to balance in the building of investment and insurance products with the investment products.
Mm-hmm.
And so why is that? Well, the insurance products are really what bring the power of distribution into play. The law of large numbers is very good at distributing. So you want to get the attributes of that built in over the course of time from an efficiency perspective if you like that strategy. And so but as you look at that strategy for somebody who's maybe 5 years longer away from retirement and implementing that, there is a balance point to that, meaning you don't want to have too much investments or too much insurance, because you want to match up the balancing of this accumulation distribution power for the optimal positions for efficiency. So it's kind of like balancing a teeter-totter or a seesaw, for example. And so it's not an either or again between these two powers of investment insurance.
And when it's a one-to-one, hypothetically, and if you have $1 million of investments, is the goal to have $1 million of a permanent death benefit? Or is $1 million of cash value? Like, help me understand the one-to-one concept.
It's really measuring initially the permanent death benefit as a balance with your and projected like calculated assets in the future. So that's the beginning of this calculation of balancing, and then it does translate into the permanent life cash values as well. As part of that is with these strategies that are built outside of it.
And there's two types of strategies that you talk about. You talk about covered asset strategy, which is using permanent death benefit, allows you to potentially have some annuity options, single pay annuity options, gives you more potential income, and has a death benefit that covers if something prematurely happens to you. That's a strategy. It's almost like creating your own pension. And then there's the volatility buffer, which is the idea if and when the market goes down, let's tap into an uncorrelated asset. Could be a life insurance policy, could be a reverse mortgage, could be an annuity, could be a high yield savings account. And just by eliminating those down years, you potentially could take out more income with the same certainty. I don't know if compliance is going to cut all that out. But my question to you is, if it was up to you and you had a wand, how many buffer years is ideal in your opinion? Because there's an opportunity cost. You could have 20 buffer years, but then the opportunity cost of growth is like, well, you're missing out on growth. But if you have 2 buffer years, it's like, well, is that really enough? So in your opinion, how many buffer years do you think are ideal to shoot for?
Yeah. So when you look at an investment-based income strategy for retirement, and you're looking at trying to pull highest withdrawal rates you can without too big of probabilities of failure, a bad sequence of returns in the beginning of retirement, like the first, say, 3 to 10 years, is really what you're you got to have a way to mitigate that. Because if it happens and you don't have a way to mitigate it, you're kind of in trouble in year 15, 25, or 30. So another way to say that is the first year return of retirement on an investment-based strategy is the magnitude-wise biggest return year of retirement. Why? Because it impacts exponentially everything beyond it. So the sooner you have a problem, the sooner you have to be able to mitigate it to do that. So 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you really want to probably have a minimum of 3 for that volatility buffer. Why? Because it gets you through that initial phase of potential issue on sequencing in the first 5 to 7 years, let's say. If you have 4 or 5 years, that might be even better. But there's a point of futility with it. Like at some point, like having 9 years of buffer versus 10 doesn't really change the probabilities much.
I see.
Right. So there's a sweet spot in there where like the first 3 years definitely have a lot of change in it.
Yeah.
But you may want 4, 5, or 6 because the incremental changes on the probabilities gets better.
I see.
But then eventually they don't get much better.
Yeah. So I'm putting words in your mouth. You can disagree with that, but 3 at a minimum, 6 at a maximum. You may feel better with 7.
Yeah, somewhere in that range now you're getting into the,
I see.
hey, why do I have so many years of buffer?
Yeah, I see.
Because of the incremental change as you go up.
But if you value liquidity, there could be a world where if you value liquidity and opportunity, you may, not investment advice, but you may like those buffer assets, but those buffer assets are not just bailing out your income. Those buffer assets could be potentially creating an opportunity for the future.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention on this? And I will just say, if you are a financial professional and want to learn more about Wealth Building Cornerstones, we'll have a special link for you down below. So make sure to go check that out. And if you're not a financial professional, but you're interested in what this could look like for you, we'll also have a special link for you to check out. Anything else you want to mention before I shoot a couple crazy questions that compliance might shoot down?
No, go for it.
Okay. So talk to me about Index Universal Life. I know you say product agnostic. I know you personally lean towards whole life, and maybe it's 100%. I'm just curious your thoughts around IUL. Does IUL play a role in retirement planning? Have you used it? Do you like it? What is your thoughts when it comes to the IUL versus whole life?
Sure. I think this permanent life insurance space is always a topic of discussion, especially at different events and things. A simple way to say this kind of is whole life is the automatic platform, meaning there's not a lot of moving parts to it for real. Like you've got a guaranteed growth element and then a non-guaranteed based on future dividends and performance. But at the same time, if they don't pay dividends or anything, the policy can't go away on you. So the premiums are guaranteed, everything's guaranteed in there. So that's like the bulletproof type of approach for purposes of safety. When you start to go into like a universal life chassis platform, it does have more moving parts. And so you really have to watch that more now because they've transferred some of the risk of the policy to the insured with how the mortality charges and interest rate components work inside of there that are live calculations now happening all the time. And they're using those types of assumptions to back calculate how much premium you should be paying to make this policy last. Well, if those assumptions don't hold true for the interest rates you might earn or the mortality charges you might be charged with inside the policy, all of a sudden you may owe more premium later on. So those just need kind of a little bit more, I would say, attention over the course of time, because you don't want to end up at, say, age 75 or 80 with a problem you didn't see developing.
Right.
Because then it could be too late to fix. So if you're going to use those types of IULs or any type of really UL chassis for purposes of long-term type of areas, you really got to make sure you understand the mechanisms that are being pulled in the inside for making that policy work. And I would say get in-force illustrations pretty regularly on those, especially as you age, because the per unit cost of insurance goes up every year as you get older.
Is it possible, or is the pitch for IULs almost like they're trying to marry accumulation and distribution? And is it almost one of those things where it's like it potentially does both, maybe not as good as the one or the other?
Yeah, it's like, right, they're trying to get better returns.
It's almost like they're trying to become an investment with an insurance wrapper.
Yeah, that's essentially kind of what it is. The idea behind it is that you want to get better returns than what whole life could provide.
Right.
But to do that, you have to accept the risks that go with it. So you don't just get that.
Yes.
You if you're going to project better than what we know is the kind of, I guess, like baseline approach with the guaranteed whole life, if you're trying to project better than that, you're going to have to take some risk then on the downside. Like, okay, well, now my guarantee maybe doesn't go to age 110. It's only going to age 80 or whatever it is. So you never get anything for free here.
I understand. Yeah.
Right. So that's really the idea here between, I think, IUL is that, hey, we're going to shoot for getting better returns with these moving parts than whole life can.
Right.
But at the same time, you're picking up a risk element that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of.
One thing with your system and way of teaching is there's some people out there that are teaching like, put all your money in insurance, use that for cash flow, and you will use life insurance as a volatility buffer. And you're not opposed to borrowing against cash value or withdrawing basis, but that's not necessarily like the premise or the foundation of all of where your money should go. And where IUL typically, like the pitch is like, look at how much income you can produce. And it makes me a little bit uncomfortable to put all your eggs maybe in a basket when you're taking on more risk. And you could probably, this is not investment advice, probably get better alpha not going through an insurance company and going directly yourself. But I'm just, it's interesting to me with this whole strategy. It's like with that, you really want the essence, you want the purest form of accumulation, the purest form of distribution powers. And I find that if you both together independently might produce a better outcome than maybe hybrid trying to all in one.
Yeah, this goes back to some of the stuff we've been talking about before, which is certain strategies, products, or things are appropriate or more efficient at certain areas of our financial lives. And we just want to identify which ones are good at that. So anytime something starts to try to do something that another power is really dominant in,
Yes.
or another product or strategy, it should give you pause, because it's like, well, why am I doing it with this thing here then? Because investments, just from a straight up historical perspective, they're hard to beat for growth.
Yes.
Like they just are. Yeah, there's different levels of safety that you can say you want or something like that. But to badmouth the investment industry and say, hey, you shouldn't have your money in the stock markets, that's a tough argument when you look at the last, say, 40 years of performance.
I don't think it compounds well. I think it's a hard pitch. It's a hard pitch.
So I think like when you start getting into these other things where you're kind of modifying those growth things, you got to kind of analyze, like you were talking about, like, hey, is this really what this is meant to do?
Yes. Okay. When it comes to working with clients in the system, there's many people in our space that heavily overfund using PUA riders, maybe term riders as well. It's my understanding when it comes to this, you're mainly focused on the permanent initial death benefit. And so are you as concerned about max funding policies with PUAs? I know we're talking technicalities here, but it's my understanding where that's not necessarily a huge play when it comes to the two distributions, or the two powers, I should say. Yeah,
so if we're going to talk like specifically about, say, like a whole life policy setup, some of this is personal preference. Some of it has to do with where you're looking at the emphasis of the product. So to me, permanent life insurance is not a short-term product.
Yes.
It's a long-term product for your whole life, basically.
I understand.
So I'm not necessarily super concerned about trying to maximize the cash value in year 8 or something of that nature, because this is something that is really long-term. So what are the efficiencies of the product in whatever situation we're using it inside of for a strategy? Could I decide to emphasize that for some reason? Yeah, I could. I still have that product. I still have the attributes of it. But anytime you emphasize a certain area of it in the front or the back or whatever, it's going to do something on the back end that's different then, right?
Yes.
The pie is only that same size. So if you
there's no free lunches in this game.
Right.
If you value higher early cash value, you may be taking a sacrifice long term on the permanent death benefit that potentially you would want in something like this.
Right. So they're going to, as soon as you start to do that, it's going to move around. This is why they make different straight up platforms for a whole life. Like you have a paid up at 65, payable 100, payable to 121, or whatever the different categories are. So you could pick a base platform that's already built that way. On top of that, though, you could take a payable 100 or a payable to 121 type product and do PUA on them, or term riders and things like that too. Again, anytime you modify, though, a base product, you do pay for that. Like it might be an outright fee that you're paying to modify a base product. It might be an internal repositioning of the values based on how you want it to perform in a certain spot versus another. So long term, we're kind of, you get to a point very quickly you're going to start to split hairs, is my point.
I see. Okay.
Like, why don't we just use this for the long term positioning a lot of the time, unless there's a specific reason why I want it on a short run basis. We are splitting hairs here a little bit, because I'm not trying to say like it's evil.
No.
To have like a early cash value type product or something at all, because there could be preferences as to why you want that. We're in a realm right now where if you have a permanent life product that's a part of your strategies, you have it.
Yes.
And if it's a little bit less efficient here than there,
I hear.
On the big picture strategy is really what matters.
What's your thoughts and we won't name any names, but I know you're aware of these concepts of people that say all your money should be tax exempt, and the fact that you have any money in the market, you're doing your clients a disservice because of taxes. Because obviously this wealth building cornerstones philosophy is using two economic powers, and in many cases you're not going to have it all tax free or tax exempt. What would you say to that? Because I think, while it sounds good, it could be potentially really damaging to have all your money, let's just say, in life insurance, or all your money in a tax-free, quote-unquote, vehicle.
Well, there's a lot of things around that discussion point. What I mean by that is there's different parameters here. You've got return aspects, like rate of return over time. How aggressive are you being? How long is your disposition on the planning elements, like at 10 years or at 30 years? Then you have tax brackets to deal with. Are the tax brackets going to be higher or lower? How might it impact my Medicare taxation later on? So there's different things that play into this discussion. And there's obvious brackets out there. So if I just start with like tax implications, because that's kind of the premise of this tax exempt area, right? Well, everybody's gonna be a little different here, because if you're making a big income today of $1.5 million a year or something, let's say, at retirement, are you really gonna want to go down to $100,000 a year to stay underneath the IRMA threshold?
Yeah.
That's probably not gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
My point to go to those types of extremes is that you got to play in a relative nature for where you're at.
I understand.
And you and I don't know what the tax brackets are going to be in 20, 30 years exactly. A lot of people will say they have to be higher. Do they? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
You could have something come in administratively or politically that says, no, we want to go lower for whatever reasons. Now you got these tariffs out there that are also part of this equation with money coming. Different things that are impacting this that you and I have no way to know.
Yes.
So this idea that you have to do it one way or this way, I don't agree with. And I think you can personally plan based on where your relative nature is to things, to know where you might fall and then make adjustments that are close there. But that is the tail of the dog.
I see.
The tail doesn't wag the dog, right?
I understand.
So you have to understand your big picture strategies first for efficiencies, and then sprinkle in those things that can help on the edges and give you maneuverability, but not plan with the tail.
I see. And not let that be a fear-based. Yeah.
Right.
Jason, is there anything else that you want to say before we land this plane?
Seek out efficiencies in the plans. Be agnostic and understand how these different tools are supposed to be working together, because there's not one tool or product that does everything well.
Yep. Instead of calling it retirement planning, we should call it future cash flow planning. And if we called it future cash flow planning, people may be way more intentional about what they do, how they do it, because that's really what you're doing. So thank you for all the research, all your time creating this software. Again, if you want to learn more about Wealth Building Cornerstones as a financial professional, we'll have a link down for you. And if you are not a financial professional, but you're like, this resonates and I want to learn more about my personal situation, we'll also have a link down for you. Jason, thank you. And always appreciate jamming with fellow Wisconsinites. So go Pack, go.
Thanks for having me.
And appreciate it.